This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Don't tell me they don't use money in the 23rd century.
Well, we don't.
The economics of the future is somewhat different. The acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives.
We work to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
What does that mean exactly?
It means we don't need money.
How does Star Trek's future work? I have asked this question a lot recently. In the previous videos in this series, I've attempted to explain various facets of a society like the one depicted in Star Trek. How does a post-scarcity society with no money handle things like work, property, government, housing, leisure, and so on? I think I made a pretty good stab at these things, but for every point I made, I noticed a comment contradicting me. Often these comments weren't disagreements, but someone pointing to a scene or line of dialogue in Star Trek which goes against what I've argued. And these points are pretty easy to find, which is why I included my own headcanon ideas. For example, I argued that a lot of grunt work is done by robots, even though we don't actually see that many robots in Star Trek. Attempting to explain how Star Trek's future works is such a frustrating thing to do, because it doesn't take long to tie yourself in knots. And that's because Star Trek's universe is fundamentally broken. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the only tool you'll need to create a beautiful looking website for your business, portfolio, or online store. I used it to create my production company's website, and I didn't know the first thing about coding. I just found a template that worked for me and customized it using simple drag and drop tools. And now the process is even easier thanks to design intelligence. By combining 2 decades of industry-leading design expertise and cutting-edge AI technology, you can have a brand new website up and running literally within minutes. Everything from finding a template to integrating SEO can be personally tailored to your needs. Jump over to Squarespace using the link below to start building your website and use the coupon code Rowan J. Coleman for 10% off your first purchase. Now what I mean by this is that if you logically follow the implications of many Star Trek technologies, then the Star Trek universe should not work the way it's depicted. For example, the mere existence of replicators should lead to the Federation having effectively limitless energy and resources. Now I know just saying that has sent some of you rocketing to the comments furiously typing, but hold your horses and let me explain. Like many things in Star Trek, how exactly replicators work has been left quite vague, but there are 2 schools of thought. The first says that replicators are capable of creating matter out of pure energy. The second says replicators need to ingest raw matter first to convert that matter into new things. Again, I know some of you are about to quote Memory Alpha or some technical manual at me, but like I said, hold your horses. My problem with this debate is that the existence of the second supports the existence of the first. If replicators can convert matter into energy and energy into matter, then surely they can convert pure energy into matter. It's not as if the energy has to exist as matter first in order to be convertible. If replicators can convert energy into matter, then raw materials be damned, just feed a replicator enough energy and it can make whatever you want. Now perhaps this process requires a lot more power to pull off, but with Starfleet's resources, humanity could quite easily tap into an infinite energy source, namely the sun. Today, our world uses 580 billion terajoules of energy per year. Capturing just 1% of the sun's energy output would provide us with over 4 trillion terajoules of energy per second. Starfleet is more than capable of constructing a Dyson swarm to harness that energy. Much like Rom's self-replicating mines from Deep Space Nine, Starfleet could deploy a handful of self-replicating solar panel satellites to create a Dyson swarm. The energy could then be beamed back to Earth or sent anywhere in the solar system via microwaves. The sun will eventually burn out and die, but on the human scale, its lifespan is so vast and its energy output is so large that it might as well be infinite. This limitless energy could then be used to power more replicators on both a personal and industrial scale. Remember, as we've established, as long as a replicator has enough energy, it can create as much matter as it wants, and we just gave all replicators limitless energy. By the 24th century, Star Trek's technology essentially allows us to create an infinite resources glitch. What's even more mind-blowing is that with Starfleet's resources and expertise, this system can be recreated in any solar system. A single warp-capable ship carrying a handful of self-replicating satellites is all that's needed to get started. Setting up a Dyson swarm for infinite resource production would probably be the standard practice for colonizing a new star system. With this in mind, we come to the contradictions. If replicator technology allows the Federation to harness limitless energy and resources, then why are there dilithium mines? Perhaps one dilithium mine would be needed at first, but as soon as one replicator has the pattern for dilithium, that pattern can be emailed essentially to the rest of the Federation. As soon as that happens, the Federation can produce as much dilithium as it would ever need. There's this idea that certain materials are just too complex to be replicated, but frankly, that strikes me as nonsense. If replicators can make phasers and other complex devices, why would they have trouble with base resources, which are much simpler in their structure? The same goes for gold-pressed latinum. What's so complex about a metal wrapped in another metal? It makes sense for the Ferengi to impose this arbitrary limit on replicators to keep their economy going, but the Federation would be able to print as much latinum as it wants. I once had this theory that when the Starfleet officers on DS9 wanted to participate in Quark's casino games, they simply replicated some latinum to get started. After all, for Starfleet officers, it's about having fun, not winning money. Any winnings they take home can either be dematerialized in the replicator, or, for the most enthusiastic hobbyists, kept in a safe place in their quarters. It simply doesn't make sense for Federation citizens to be unable to replicate latinum. If a transporter can beam it, a replicator can make it. Of course, this is contradicted by the episode in the cards.
If you want to bid at the auction, use your own money.
I'm human. I don't have any money.
But let's stick with the headcanon for now and take this even further. If the Federation can harness limitless energy and resources, its geopolitical power on the galactic stage would be second to none. Imagine how powerful this ability would be in preventing wars. After all, the entire Cardassian conflict came out of the Cardassian Empire's resource crisis. The whole reason they occupied Bajor was to exploit the planet's resources. The Federation could fix this instantly. Either they can provide the Cardassians with what they need, or simply give the Cardassians the technology so the Cardassians can do it themselves. If it seemed like the Cardassians would use these new resources to expand even further, the Federation could make withdrawing from Bajor a condition of the treaty. Something like that. Wars happen for a variety of reasons, but they hinge on controlling resources. Even the Klingons care about their lands and possessions as much as they care about glorious battle. But even if one of the Federation's rivals was so determined to fight a war, remember, the Federation has limitless resources. Imagine the kind of offensive capability they possess. I'm not even talking about building starships here. The Federation could use its overwhelming industrial power to produce thousands, if not millions, of warp-capable torpedoes. If that's too aggressive sounding, think of the number of shield generators and automated defense platforms which could be built. Crude ships would certainly be needed here and there, but in any large-scale conflict, the Federation's military might would eclipse its nearest rivals. Even if the Klingons, Romulans, or Dominion created their own infinite resource glitch, that would only make them equal to the Federation, not their superior. It would mean stalemate, which would mean peace.
They have weapons, you have weapons, everyone has weapons, but right now, no one has a clear advantage. So the price of peace is at an all-time low.
In the 24th century, when replicators have seen mass adoption, war in Star Trek's universe should barely exist. The Borg would pose a threat, but conflicts with the Cardassians, Klingons, Romulans, and Dominion would be handled through careful negotiation and trade. Aside from a few small pockets of frontier Federation territory, there would be no need for mines, factories, or freighters. In a post-scarcity society, bandits and pirates also would not exist. Yet that's not usually what we see in this universe. Instead, we see holographic workers toiling in dilithium mines, thieves attempting to steal warp plasma for profit, and space battles over shipyards. When the implications of Star Trek's technology are taken to their logical conclusion, none of this should exist. So why does it? The uncomfortable truth is, Most Star Trek writers never truly embraced Gene Roddenberry's vision. Now, to be clear, I don't think Gene Roddenberry was an infallible genius. He came up with a great concept, but as a writer, his contributions to Star Trek are largely subpar, and his idea of what constituted bright and utopian bordered on the puritanical at times. It's also worth noting that Roddenberry's vision changed over time. Star Trek the original series is optimistic, but hardly utopian. It was progressive in many ways, but it's still a show very much of its time. There are numerous references to money and religion which you'd never find in the Next Generation. Star Trek's future as a utopia didn't come about until the motion picture, and was fully crystallized in early TNG. It's here elements like post-scarcity living with no money and abundance through replicators are definitively established. This is where Star Trek, as most people know it, came into being. The vision of a future where humanity has overcome its petty squabbles, and struggle, strife, action, and adventure are found on the frontier, not at home.
We have eliminated hunger, want, the need for possessions. We've grown out of our infancy.
Weirdly, it's works like Ian M. Banks' Culture series which embody this concept far better than most of Star Trek. Unfortunately, Roddenberry's own, at times dogmatic view of this utopian vision often led him to dismiss story ideas rather than generating ones of his own. It seems as Star Trek developed, writers came to view Roddenberry's vision as a zero-sum game. Either commit to a utopian future where everyone is happy and have dull, lethargic, intellectual stories, or walk back the utopian future to create rich, character-focused stories. Don't get me wrong, I love what Nicholas Meyer and Harve Bennett did in turning Star Trek into outer space naval adventure. My favourite Star Trek show is Deep Space Nine, which at times actively deconstructs Roddenberry's vision. Each time writers pushed back and took bold creative swings, great Star Trek often followed. However, I can't help but feel that Star Trek's identity has been slowly watered down as a result. Gradually, it has drifted away from its core concept and transformed into a more generic sci-fi setting. Beginning in the 90s, Star Trek stories became more and more about the Federation under attack, or the Federation being corrupted, or taking place at a time before the Federation even existed. These stories aren't bad, in fact many are the best Star Trek has to offer, but the mythos has increasingly turned insular. Star Trek was supposed to be about going boldly where no one has gone before. It was supposed to be about imagining a better and brighter future, but over time, Star Trek became more and more obsessed with the past. With each video I've made in this series, I've seen a lot of negative comments. Some comments are caveats. Sure, they say there's no money, but they have energy credits, which are basically the same thing. Some comments are light dismissals. Star Trek's just a fictional setting, made up by writers. It doesn't make sense and it doesn't have to. Others are harsh dismissals. Utopias never work, Star Trek is just space communism and communism sucks, etc, etc. And then there are the hot takes. Star Trek's future is actually a dystopia, and here's why. To me, all of these comments are essentially saying the same thing. I don't want to think about this. To which I say, isn't it worth thinking about? I know Star Trek is made up, I know it's inconsistent, I know many of my explanations are probably flawed, but if you think my ideas are wrong, why not suggest your own? Why not seriously entertain the idea of what a better world would look like, rather than outright dismissing it as impossible? Because we should always be thinking about improving ourselves and the world around us. That's how human civilization makes progress. It does not make progress by assuming the world as it is as good as it will ever be. There are countless things we take for granted today that people in the past could only dream of. Star Trek's future may be a dream, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. A map of the world that does not include Utopia is not even worth glancing at, for it leaves out the one country at which humanity is always landing. And when humanity lands there, it looks out, and, seeing a better country, sets sail. Progress is the realization of utopias. Thank you for watching. Leave the video a like, and if you want to stay up to date on future uploads, hit the subscribe button and bell icon. You can also see videos early, uncut, and ad-free by joining me on Patreon. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank all of my patrons and members with an ultra thanks to Ian Feebig, Alex Miller, Eamon Kelly, Michael Hardy, Ian Hodge, County Ark, Mike Halsey, Retro PC Gamer, Benjamin Stokes, Hiroshi the Dog, Movie Magic, Charles Borsam, Olivia Computer, Bano, Extreme Streamers, Tom, Dusk, Colin Camille, Patrick Fleming, Matthew Camille, Ed Mark Starr, Dylan Thomas, Lilac Yane, Howard Craig Kervik, and Caging G. Thank you once again for watching, and until next time, have a good one.